Right, my name is Geraldine Hills, and I'm also the parent of a child with disabilities, and I also run a company called Inclusive Choice Consultancy. So, how long have I got? Just so I know. Okay, what's the time now? 2. Oh, So, I'm the parent of a young man, 11 years old, called Sam. So, Sam started his life in special school, which I was immensely proud of, and in the special school, they told us, that's myself and Sam's dad, that there was nothing my son couldn't do, there was nothing he couldn't be, and so I just accepted that, because I believed it as well. And in this special school in Manchester, they built him up and built him up, until one day, I always make my life sound like a story, but it feels like that to me, because one day they said, I know, let's do transition and send him to mainstream. Now this wasn't just me that said this, or his dad. There were about 10 of us, visually impaired, speech and language, mobility and visually impaired, all of them. So we said, okay then, let's do that. And so we did, and it was all great. And you know, we did a transition plan that took us weeks and weeks and months. First it was like an hour or 2 at the school, then it was half a day, then half a day with lunch. So this was never about, you know, his dad and I just being in complete denial and saying, this is what we want. We worked in partnership with other professionals as well as ourselves. We got to the mainstream school, and to this day, I will never understand why they did what they did. Suffice to say, I ended up on Richard and Judy, which I hated, because I've never been so embarrassed, because they put me next to Katie Price, she was an idiot. Because my son's got sector-optic dysplasia, and so was hers. So the school basically had, any time they wanted to, this mainstream school, to say, this transition isn't working, because we had tried so hard. Never said anything. 12 days after Sam was in the school, they decided they didn't want him. Now, when you say you don't want a child in your school, you have to come up with reasons why. That's the law. You have to justify, in other words, why you're saying what you're saying. And you have to write a report. So I said to the LEA, this is not good. What's happening? Oh, big, long, drawn-out report. So here comes this report that got us on the telly. It was so disgusting. They said, the school, the head, Sam needs things reiterating to him more than once. It's causing a disturbance. And interesting, that bit in the law about if it's detrimental to other children, we can get away with it. Remember though, I said there has to be evidence to prove it. You don't just get to say whatever you feel like. Well, you can, but you've got to prove it. Anyway, Sam can't carry his own tray. Therefore, it's causing a disturbance, and we haven't got the staff to help him. And it went on. Sam is causing cues to use the PE equipment, and it's not fair on the other children. So let's not have a buddy scheme then, or tolerance. So, and I'm going to continue pacing like this, because it's what I do. So, the report went on like this. I knew nothing about the law, nothing about the Equality Act or anything like that. But I knew this was wrong, that they were saying that my son was useless. And the thing that really pushed me over the edge is he said the son was an educable. I can't even say it. Educable. Equitable? Yeah, one of those. It's very Victorian anyway. So, I decided that I would find out what this thing was, the Tribunal, found it out. I rang up a charity called IPSIA, Independent Parental Special Education Advice, and they agreed to help me to stop them from saying this about my son. So, I went down the road of Tribunal. Now, to cut a long story short, yes, I won the Tribunal. Won, you know, that's the word they use. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I wanted an apology for my son. Unfortunately, even though I won the Tribunal, the school didn't turn up for the training, so that needs to be looked up. Nothing was followed through. And when we finally got the apology, it said something like, sorry you couldn't fit it, and it was ridiculous. As I was doing the Tribunal and trying to learn the law and not sleeping, I had this amazing, massive breakdown. And at the height of my breakdown, I think it's funny now, but it wasn't at the time, because I was hiding it for a long time, because the school wouldn't stop phoning me and oh, he's done this, he's done that. I had this breakdown, And at the height of it, we just had a fridge delivered, and I got up one morning, I don't know why that particular morning, and I thought I'm going to go down to the garage, get the cardboard that the fridge has been delivered in, and make myself a dress out of it, draw a picture of the headmaster, which was a big circle, 2 eyes and a nose like a Halloween mouth, and tape it to myself, crying the whole time, muttering. I sort of managed to get to the school like this because I couldn't walk, crying because I'd really lost it, pacing up and down. Somebody must have phoned my husband, and by this time it was raining, and said, your wife is outside the school, she's muttering, I think she said the F word, and you need to come and get her. By the time he got to me, the cardboard had all swollen, I couldn't get in the car, I was like, so he curb crawled and said, come on sweetheart, and I was like, I hate him, what's he done to my son? And then I realised, you know, I didn't win the tribunal because justice prevailed. One of the reasons I won is because I was allegedly articulate. I don't have English as a second language. I suppose I don't have learning difficulties. But anyway, so the point was, and I can use IT, and that played a very big part in it. And I could shout, and you know, that's not okay, that you have to be a particular way to get justice. So I thought, right, I've had a breakdown and I got confined to my room or something. I don't remember a lot of it. But I do know I started writing. Now, I've never written anything my whole life ever before, and I don't have qualifications in writing. But I thought, why has this happened to my family? Why have I lost the plot? Why did the school think they could do this? And then I realised it was really loads and loads of information out there about the Equality Act, and I couldn't understand it. It was quite flowery, quite long-winded. And having dyspraxia and dyslexia myself, I'd read something and I'd be like, yeah, and then I'd forget it. I'd read it again, but I'll have it, but it's gone again. So it's like, oh my God, I need to try and find a way to help myself and other parents. So I wrote this book. This is free, and I've created a website for you. So this is free. This tells you about the Equality Act, which I'm quickly going to go talk you through, and it talks to you about what schools are supposed to do. It is full of case studies about when schools get it right, when they get it wrong. It's about reasonable adjustments, which I'm going to quickly explain to you, less favourable treatment, and what you can ask for. But more importantly, it's about how we can work effectively with schools. Had I have known this, because I became a volunteer with IPSIA and got legal training, had I have known this, maybe I could have controlled things and not gone to tribunal that absolutely pushed me over the edge. This is for you, along with the website, which if I have time, I will quickly show you. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I'm going to write a book for schools. There's my picture on the back. And Routledge published that. And this is about, because I was ill for a long time in my bedroom, because apparently I was a danger to my family. So I had to sit up for ages. I wrote this book, and again, this is about the Equality Act. So now, we're both singing from the same song sheet, okay? You know about reasonable adjustments, they know about it, and they know the consequences. So I go all over the country now. I still do all of this from my bedroom. I go all over the country and I train. And then this is my newer book, and again, that's about the equality duty now, what Ofsted are looking for when they go into schools. And believe you me, schools are struggling now to get the data that shows that our children are reaching their academic ability, taking their disabilities into account. They need to find that data, and I'm working with them now with their equality duty and their plans. Now, I can't tell you all about that today, but I do run training courses for parents. You need to speak to your parent forums so that we all have this knowledge. So I'm better now, and because I'm better now, I was thinking, why? Why did it happen? And I know why. Because the school in question had some nice old myths going on about disability. If we think about myths, you know, when you think about breaking a mirror, 7 years bad luck, that's okay, it's a bit funny, it's all right, you know. Seeing a magpie, you know, unlucky to walk under ladders. Who doesn't do that? You know, you spill salt, that's fine. And I defy anybody to say they don't have a superstition or a myth that, that they believe. But hang on, what happens when schools start believing their myths that maybe all children with Down syndrome are stubborn? Children with Tourette's syndrome will swear and disrupt the classroom. My son has severe Tourette's syndrome, among other things, and it's okay, because he's in a new school now, because I won that right. We're having a whale of a time. It's nearly on the same road, the school, but they love us as a family. They're not my mates, but we've worked together as a family, and it's been really, really okay for us. So, we've got to bust these myths. I forgive the school for what they did to my son, because I'm going to assume that they believed in all these kind of myths, and they thought this about Tourette's syndrome, or that's about his other disabilities. So I forgive them, because if I don't forgive them, I can't write my books, because I'll just keep playing that story over and over. So our job is to think, is the school's actions based on a myth? And can I just help them with that first, to see if there's something going on that they think that I need to help them to come to terms with. So I've been training in Tourette's syndrome and issues like that. Another reason is because, see, this is just really annoys me, but I've received a life ban from a, yeah, from where is it now? Oh yeah, Tesco's. Yeah, because of this. Look, he'd love to walk away from that poster too. This is the medical model of disability. So this is what's wrong with him. We don't know his name. We don't know his likes and his dislikes. So one piece of advice I would give to you is this. Whenever you go into a school, if you're not sure, have a look what's coming out of their mouths. So what's wrong with your child would be better with what's their name, what's on their walls, what's in their literature. He'd love to walk away from this poster. I went mad with the muscular dystrophy people. I haven't done it in black and white, they did. Look at this, it's terrible. Oh no, uphill. He'll be stuck there for the rest of his life. No friends, no colour, no nothing. Imagine somebody coming down the corridor at school thinking they're really funky and nice, and then this is a representation. So we need to start looking at our schools and thinking, is that okay? Should that be on the wall? Our children's centres? Other children will see this and make assumptions that children with disabilities are boring, they can't be played with, you know, they're too delicate. I doubt whether he's even disabled, and that's too, it's just all ridiculous. I think possibly if they'd have put a bolt of lightning in or something and stuck it, they would have been really happy. It's a really negative image. So go back to your schools or wherever it is and have another look at what's on their walls and could it be better. So I think this is what they had going on with my son when they decided to write a report saying he was useless as a way of justifying why he couldn't stay in the school. So I found out about the Equality Act, and that's what all my books are about. One of the reasons I won the Tribunal was because I understood that, yes, it came in 2010, so there's your big envelope, and inside your big envelope now we've got all this going on. So we're all protected somewhere, here we are. Let me tell you what hasn't changed though. Schools do not get to have it their own way. And while I say that, just to let you know, this book is dedicated to my son's second school because I'm so proud of them and myself as the parent. We've done a brilliant job together. So this has got nothing to do with me saying that all schools are terrible, because that's a lie. However, it's no excuse for them to keep saying they don't understand the Equality Act or taking their high hand when they're making these decisions and not including us as parents. You know, it hasn't really changed, even though we've got the Equality Act. You still have to think about reasonable adjustments schools do to avoid less favourable treatment. And the wording might change, but it doesn't matter. You still don't get to make these sweeping statements about children and exclude them. So, because at the moment my son just happens to be barking and swearing, it's such a nightmare when you're going shopping. It can be really difficult. But you know, the school in question now, they've said like, okay, we need to tell other people that at the moment this is what Sam is doing, and what can we do? I have seen the most gorgeous children just really give my son a lot of space, a lot of understanding. His Facebook is full of friends. Could have so easily been the other way if he was in the other school, which is right, you're being punished. They're not going to punish my son because they don't have a blanket policy under the Equality Act that says, right, you're all going to be the same. You can't do that. They have to have a differentiated policy because my son can't help what he does. So we're protected against discrimination, about harassment, victimisation of claimants and their families. It's really important that you realise that if a school, for want of a better term, goes after you because a member of your family or your brother has made a claim, it's not okay. I'm particularly focusing on schools today, just showing you that the Equality Act does protect us against harassment and victimisation. Extra protection for parents. If they're having, and this is so important, if your school is having a parents' evening, say for instance, and they say to you as the carer, I'm terribly sorry, no, you either come at this time or you're not coming, that's giving you a worse service than a family that has no disability and they can choose a convenient time. They make a reasonable adjustment, otherwise, do you know what happens? Parents of children with no disabilities get to know their children's strengths and weaknesses and how we can support them, and I don't then. Is that what you're telling me? If I can't meet your time and your day that suits the teacher best, no. Make a reasonable adjustment for that parent. And the word reasonable doesn't mean as a parent I get to have it all my own way and just wander in. But I think sometimes schools interpret it like that. It means reasonable for a reason. We work together to be reasonable. So you are protected and you have a right to say this is not working for me. Don't get overwhelmed. It's in the book for you. And I've written the book as if I was talking to myself with dyslexia and what have you, because I can't have things big and long and all that kind of thing. Positive action. Yes, we can do a positive action. So the other day, for instance, teacher says, you didn't get the good attendance award to the class because so-and-so had time off, so I'm afraid you didn't make it. So-and-so happens to have a disability. Now all the class knows, so they don't like it. Do we go on about bullying? Well, you just set them up to be bullied. So positive action then would be, if it's related to their disability, you can mark them there. That's okay. You can do that. If it's not, that's fine. Then treat it the same as everybody else. I want my son to be treated the same as everybody else. But where he is off school for whatever reason, and it's because of his disability, you can do something nice, like marking that he's there or whatever. So if a teacher says to you, well, it'll show favouritism, yes, of course it will, but it's not favouritism. Because it means if you don't do that, our children won't thrive. So actually, if someone ever says to you, well, the other parents won't like it, and if we do it for one, we'll do it for everybody. No, you don't. Because don't do it for my son unless it's disability related. So schools would do well to do my training and read my books, because then not only will they get better Ofsted, but more importantly, they'll have better conversations with parents, because we will both know. That's why my son, we're really looking forward to him going up to high school. We've had such a wonderful time in his school now. I'm knackered, but it was worth it. And you know, both me and the school, we've worked hard. And we do things like this for Sam all the time, positive action. So, there's your Equality Act. Everything lives in there. And we have extra protection for you, which means you get a voice. And you need to speak her. Get some knowledge, do my training, if not mine, somebody else's, but no, just do mine. Okay, this is so quick, really, you know, it frustrates me because I would love to, spend the day training you in this, but you know something, this is how I won my tribunal case. They said, my son, only needed one thing, by the way. My son met the definition of disability. I can't go into that now due to time. But he's got mobility, he's got speech, he's got vision. He only needed one of them, it's fine, you know. The tribunal said, Sam is a child with disabilities and the school treated him less favourably. The minute the school said he cannot carry his own tray, imagine that. Tribunals cost thousands of pounds and I had to sit there in this ridiculous waste of time because this head spent his time with a massive list of the things. And the last thing he said, he didn't take my son on the school trip, and he said to the tribunal, well, he wouldn't get it. And the tribunal said, if you do that again in front of Mr. and Mrs. Hills, you will be asked to leave. He's doing this again, but there is extremes because the school he's in now, I have nothing but respect for the head and the staff there. They've made our lives amazing. And I hope they have the same respect for me because I've tried hard too. But I do everything under the Equality Act so that it's clear and professional. Because the TA, I have big respect for her, and she's in the book, in the dedication, but she's not my mate. So I like to know where I stand. So, less favourable treatment, not to treat pupils with disabilities or prospective pupils. You don't get to say you're not coming in, no, you are. Admissions, all in the book. I never do chapters more than 2 pages because I'm bored then. So everything I sum up really quickly. Yeah, the thing is, if I ever go to write my life story, it'd be really boring. It's just going to be rubbish. Not to treat people with disabilities less favourably than others for a reason that is related to their disability. Let me tell you now, right? If my son sets fire to the school, I want him punished. Well, not the first school, it's all right. If my son sets fire school, it's nothing to do with his disability, and I want him disciplined the same way as everybody else, okay? Because he's not special, he's special to me. I want him disciplined. However, if you treat a child less favourably for a reason related to their disability and you did nothing and you set him up to fail. So if you put my son in the playground without the agreed support and then he goes and does something, don't you tell me about less favourable treatment. What was your role in it? So my role is to treat schools with respect, but I'm equal to you, I expect the same. So be careful about the justification. If I'd have had this knowledge, maybe I could have stopped them, because the justification frightened me. Oh, he's going to upset the other children. This isn't the, you know what it's like. This isn't the right place for him. He'll get worse here. And I love my son, and I'm thinking, oh God, you know. Nah, it was all rubbish. Because the school, the other end of the road now, they haven't got any money either. I never hear from them. In fact, the teacher said to me, she said, Sam's not an issue. She said, we've got other children here with no statements, no disabilities, nothing, and they won't stay on their seats. So that was music to my ears. So I know it's genuine then when they come and talk to me. So, reasonable adjustments. Get someone else to carry his tray. That's a reasonable adjustment. But it took us a year and a half to get justice for Sam at the tribunal, because the school were found to be lying about funding. So they stopped the tribunal after 7 months of waiting. I'm glad now. And they had to go and get all their funding issues in relation to Sam. The tribunal said, nonsense, you can't afford it. There's in his statement, shut up. Reasonable adjustments. Hold his hand to use the PE equipment. That was in the summing up of the tribunal. You couldn't make, and when I was on Richard and Judy, because you know Richard's, he's quite calm, and he was getting all emotional, and I was all emotional because Peter Andre was giving me the eye. But he wasn't. I was having a breakdown, and I thought he was. But and my husband was like, he's not, Jan. It's like, I tell you he is. So, reasonable adjustments. It broke our heart though, and a lot of people actually got upset about this. He can't carry his tray. He can't use the PE equipment fast enough. He needs things telling to him more than once. Are you insane? Do you know, I hope that headmaster never gets really old or infirm. And when he needs a helping hand, because the Equality Act is for all of us, when he needs a helping hand and somebody says to him, you're getting on my nerves, you're too old, and I'm not helping you on this bus, or I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. This is the society we're supposed to live in. You've seen it on the telly when that guy, a wheelchair user, was trying to get on the train. He was late for work and they would not put that ramp down for him. Goes the same, reasonable adjustments. So, please, whenever somebody tells you something, I want you, if nothing else, to think of my voice going on and on, saying, what did Geraldine say? I'm not comfortable with this. This might be less favourable treatment. It's not something he can help, or they could have moved that. Do you know, one of my things was, they said, Sam had a Zimmer frame, they said, move the bookcases in the corridor, and the headmaster said, well, the thing is, that's a lot of trouble. Shut up. Move them, and that's what the tribunal said, move them. Why did we have all that money wasted? Somebody should be held accountable for that, and he wasn't. I was, because I had a breakdown. I went off with Charlie and made a cardboard dress. So, schools have to avoid less favourable treatment and watch out for justification. Just because they're saying it, it doesn't make it right. Although I don't use that for my husband. If I say it, it's right. They've got to look for reasonable adjustment, and reasonable adjustments could really be moving a classroom from upstairs to down. But remember what I told you, I never said you have to do everything. It's called reasonable for a reason, okay? So we can all be flexible. So what's the effect of the disability discrimination duties then? It is unlawful to refuse to provide or deliberately not provide any service which it offers to other children. So that'd be after school clubs then, breakfast clubs, and be careful of the horror stories that you don't get frightened and be tempted to run away, because I panicked. Providing a service on a lower standard. So here we all are going to the museum, and you've got perhaps a child with restricted growth. They take her to the museum. Oh, you're not dressing up now though because you're too small, we've got nothing for you. No, you knew you were going, you could have been anticipatory. Yes, you could. No school says we're going on a school trip today, it's planned carefully. You can't keep saying, you know, in fact there's a report at the moment about TAs and looking at when they're with the child constantly. Now let me tell you, I wouldn't be half the person I am now and better if it wasn't for my son's TA. So I have nothing but respect. However, we can't keep using that as an excuse to provide lower standards on worse terms. So You go on a school trip, you're with the TA all the time. You can come on a school trip, but your mum's coming with you. Absolutely not. You can invite them, but it cannot be a stipulation. Absolutely not. So, because it's worse terms. So because it still means that anybody without a disability gets to access society, and my son is going to be seen completely all away from his mates and with the TA all the time. That is not like this in this school he's in now. Absolutely brilliant. So, lower standards, remember this. If you hear all these excuses all the time, well, we would, we could, we can't. Think. Reasonable adjustments, because this is what I want schools to do, and it says this in my book to them. I want you to come to me and say, okay then, so this might be an issue. What we need to know is, what do you do when you go to the museum? When he went like this about my son, and he said, there's no point in us taking him to the museum because he won't get it. How dare you? Come and ask me what I do. A reasonable adjustment would be to have dialogue with the parent and say, what do you do? Okay, then we can take that on board. So, no, and they didn't talk to Sam either, because there's not a person in the world that can't communicate. Stephen Hawkins, you know, there's nobody that can't communicate. They could have asked Sam, do you go to the museum? So instead, they offered it on lower standards and worse terms. Failing to make reasonable adjustments that make it impossible or are reasonably difficult to use the service. You can't use the PE equipment, therefore, you can't use the service. You can't. So they made him sit out. Well, no reasonable adjustments there. And that's how I won. Because although the school said something I took to be quite a compliment. They said I was the parent from hell. I quite like that, actually. I do. There's my new t-shirt, isn't it? The parent from hell. Come on, please. Do you have to sink to that level when all I'm trying to do is get an education for my son, a fair education? So always remember, it's not about knowing the law in depth. It's about saying, I don't have to take this. The onus is on you to say, what reasonable adjustments did you do before you phoned me and said, this is not working? And often, you'll find when I was doing tribunal work, voluntary tribunal work, there was often a lack of reasonable adjustments, but like my son, a nice old horror story about what he couldn't do. So that's why I won, because I was able to provide evidence that actually my son was doing all those things, but you created an environment deliberately to make it look like he couldn't. There you go. That's reasonable adjustments. They just had to prevent pupils with disabilities being placed at a substantial disadvantage. That doesn't mean sometimes that we can't give and take. I am not a warrior parent, because I think he called me, no he didn't, but Princess Zena, you know the way, and all the leather. I thought, I'll take that. So, I'm not a warrior parent, you know. God Almighty, I just want what's right for my son. So I just don't want him put at a disadvantage. So we all start on the same footing. They're aimed at everybody. You don't get to pick and choose because you think that you have a thing going on about Down syndrome, children are easier than Tourette syndrome. Nonsense. Because stop trying to fit my son or anybody else into your little syndrome boxes anyway. I don't know about Tourette syndrome from day to day, so how do they know what he's going to be like? You know this. Anticipatory. That word there, now I've learned how to say and spell it, is really important because the law clearly says you knew at some point you were going to have children of some description in your school that might need extra help. You do go on school trips and you knew it. See, when they didn't take my son on the school trip, I hate saying this, but I won on 7 points, and one of them was they were not anticipatory because the tribunal said you deliberately didn't want to take him. It didn't matter, I could sit back then because there was no evidence that they wrote me any letters. Please, please watch your conversations with school. You must put things in writing. I've created a gorgeous website for you where I've written all your letters. I've written ones about detention when it's disability related, it's a no-no. I've done lots of, they're only 2 paragraphs. Dear school, according to the Equality Act, you need to make reasonable adjustments. I'm a little bit concerned, please maybe have a meeting. Bingo. So if they do say that you're unreasonable, as they did with me, old parent from hell, actually I'd written 6 letters asking for a meeting. Right? So we need to be aware of our conversations and keeping that evidence should we ever need to talk to other professionals other than ourselves and provide them with the story and some evidence. And when they say evidence, don't be scared. I'm talking about just don't say things randomly in the playground where there's no record of it, because they're not my mates. and with the greatest respect to them, I'm a professional, you are, and they are. I don't go to my GP and say, right, I need some cream for that, but I'm not telling you anything, and don't write it down anywhere. Not that I have said that. That meant antibiotics. Right, so, you know, you don't do it in other forms of life, do you? Do not go to schools or anywhere else without being prepared first, which means how are you going to record the conversation and anything that's said to you. If they don't know, I know it's not always easy, if they don't know, then honestly, you could really hurt when you're trying to suggest that they didn't make reasonable adjustments. And I also say to schools as well, the tribunal in my case said that the school basically went out of their way to make it uncomfortable for me to disclose to them. So when they were trying to say lack of knowledge, you had all the nice letters that I'd written to them and nothing because they ignored them all. So again, I didn't have to do too much because it was obvious I tried. All of this is in the book for you, written down and on the website. So we can all do it together. We can use our parent forums, just to finish up quickly, build on our knowledge. These books are free for you. I'm going to carry on. I've got a meeting with Sarah Tether. I think she's been writing the green paper in her spare time. And I'm going to be working with the government to make sure that all new teachers get my training and my book. So that's good news. We need to be working with our parent forums, and so that we can build up our knowledge. Training needs confidence and give us a voice. It's really important that we work together. And the last thing I'm going to say to you is, it is possible to have good stories, positive stories. My son is doing amazing. I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed the journey I've been on in the 4 years my son has been in this other school. And I'm proud of us as parents, I'm proud of the school, and it does work, but we need to get the knowledge about inclusion and how it all fits together as well to have those positive outcomes. Thank you very much.